Are you ready for the most exciting Christmas adventure of them all? Robeson Audio Publications proudly presents for Christmas 2013 a brilliant new translation of E.T.A. Hoffmann's The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. A full audiobook set to the glorious music of Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Translation and musical direction by Robert Robeson. Narration by John William Cawthorne. Also to be available in Kindle Whispersync and print, with new illustrations by Gregory Gajor. And you can be the first to participate in the Christmas magic of 2013 by giving this project your pledge, in return receiving a creative gift to treasure from every Christmas thereon. And now a preview of what's to come. The first chapter of The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Robeson Audio Publications presents The Nutcracker and the Mouse King by E.T.A. Hoffmann, in a new translation by Robert Robeson. Narrated by John William Cawthorne. And now, The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Christmas Eve. For all of Christmas Eve, the children of Herr Dr. Stolbaum were not allowed to go into the foyer, nor the large, splendid drawing room just adjacent to it. Fritz and Maria sat snuggling together in a small cranny of a little nook. The sunset had been dark and dusky, and the children had a peculiar feeling, for the tapers had not been lit. Fritz drew closer to his younger sister's ear, for she had just had her 7th birthday, and told her in secret that he had heard rustling, rattling, whispering, and a gentle rapping in the chambers which had been locked since early that morning. Even more, he continued, a small somber figure with a large black box had snuck across the foyer. But, Fritz replied, I know very well that it was only Godfather Drosselmeyer. Maria clapped her delicate little hands with joy and cried out, I wonder what wonderful presents he might have made for us. The district court judge Drosselmeyer was not the handsomest of men. He was slight of build, rather small, and his face was lined with wrinkles, and over his right eye was a black patch. He was as bald as a baby, and that is why he wore a very fetching peruke, which was made of angel's hair. It was very creative. Yes, Godfather on the whole was a very creative man. He even knew how to make timepieces, clocks and watches and the like. That is to say that if one of the Stolbaum's beautiful timepieces fell into a state of disrepair, Godfather Drosselmeyer would drop by, take off his angel hair peruke, divest himself of his tightly fitted yellow jacket, slip into a workman's blue apron, and start tinkering with all types of sharp objects sticking into the gears. To Maria it seemed as if the clock were undergoing some type of painful surgery, but it was none the worse for it. On the contrary, it started ticking and talking and singing and chiming, much to the delight of everyone. Each time that Drosselmeyer would drop in, he would bring some pleasant gift for the children. He could have in his pocket some puppet that could wink its eye and bow, which was far too amusing. Or he could have a container with a little bird in it, which would hop out and whistle a little tune. Or he could have something completely different and unusual. However, it was at Christmas time that Drosselmeyer achieved his greatest masterworks, which took him a great deal of time and effort, and that is why, after each presentation, the parents would stock the gifts away with the greatest of care. Oh, I do ask myself what wonderful presents he has made for us, Maria thought out loud. Fritz had made his mind up. His was to be a fortress with strong young soldiers finely arrayed in uniform, marching in brilliant brigades back and forth. Then the enemy would attack. Invasion was anon. However, our brave soldiers within the walls of the fortress would man their cannons and make them burst into balls of fire. That's not true, Maria burst into Fritz's reverie. Godfather Drosselmeyer spoke of the most beautiful garden, with a lovely large pond with silver swans upon it, with gold bands about their necks, who sing the sweetest of songs. And there's a little girl who wanders about the pond and treats them by feeding them sweet marzipan. I have never seen a swan eat marzipan, Fritz said rudely and abruptly. And besides, Godfather Drosselmeyer cannot fabricate an entire garden, especially one with a lovely large pond in it. Besides, I don't see much use for his toys. They're promptly put away the minute we look at them. I much prefer Mamma and Papa's gifts. At least we get to do as we please with them. For a while the children sat and chatted about what their parents would give them. Maria had in mind that Fräulein Trutchen, a rather large doll, was going through some sort of change, an awkward phase where she was always falling on the floor, and then smirking. And what could one say about her soiled clothing? Not even a good chiding could help matters. It is said that Mother took much delight in seeing Gretchen's little parasol. Fritz, on the other hand, was quite certain that his royal stables were in desperate need of a good quarter horse, and that his battalion was missing a cavalry, something that was not unbeknownst to Father. The children were quite aware that their parents had purchased them all sorts of wonderful gifts, which they were now placing under the Christmas tree. However, they were also quite aware that the Son of God reigned over them in piety and looked upon them with the endearing eyes of a child. And in their minds they knew full well, as if they had been given a cornucopia of treasures, that each Christmas present would bring them more pleasure than the other. The children, who continued to chatter about the gifts that were to come, were enticed to dream on by their older sister Louisa. But she reminded them that it was only through the Son of God and the generosity of their parents that they had what true satisfaction they had. So they had to be still, quiet, and respectful, and wait for their Christmas presents. Little Maria fell into deep thought, while Fritz whispered under his breath, "I could use a good quarter horse and some Cossacks." Night had completely fallen, and it was dark. Fritz and Maria snuggled even closer together and dared not make a sound. Then they heard the sound of flapping wings about them, and from a distance some splendid music playing, and a brilliant light radiated from the cracks in the doors, and they knew that the Christ child had come and gone and was off to spread happiness to other children. That was the moment a bell began to chime. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. The drawing-room door was flung open, and a bright light radiated from withinside, so bright that the children cried out, "Ah!" and they stopped at the entry, frozen like statues. Mother and Father took each child by the hand and said, "Come in, dear children, and see what our Savior has brought you."